Hey, Blessings Youth Group, it's Pastor Hilmer here. We're down to our last 3 lessons of the Blessings Youth Group year, and all these 3 lessons deal with prayer. And I'm glad that we're ending the year on prayer because prayer is one of the most important parts of our relationship with God. And yet, it's also, for many of us, it's one of the most difficult parts of our relationship with God. And one of the reasons why it's so difficult is, I think, because we don't always really understand what prayer is actually about. And so today I want to begin with the question, what is prayer? What's actually going on with prayer? Well, the New City Catechism answers the question this way. It says, prayer is pouring out our hearts to God in praise, petition, confession of sin, and thanksgiving. And I really like that description, the idea of pouring out your heart. That's really what prayer is. It's about intentionally sharing your heart with God. Now, one of the things that has really helped me to understand prayer is actually becoming a parent. Um, when you become a parent, you look at your kids, even when they're babies, and one of the things is that, especially as babies, actually, they really share their heart, even though as babies they don't have words. When they're happy, they just naturally smile. When they're sad, when they're hungry, when they're in pain, well, then they yell, then they scream. They let you know what's on their heart. And as kids grow older, as they enter their teenage years, as parents, you still want them to share what's on their heart. Maybe not the whole screaming bit, but you want them to share with you the things that they're thinking. I know that sometimes you think we might not be interested, but we do. We, as parents, genuinely want to know what's on your heart. And what you discover is that when you, as kids, when you share with your parents what's on your heart, you'll discover that your relationship becomes incredibly close. And I think that's the way that we ought to view prayer. It's about pouring out our hearts and building that relationship that we have with God. You see that, for example, a little bit in the way that Jesus lives. Jesus, we're told that he often withdrew to the lonely places and prayed. And he did that because he wanted to really just spend time sharing with his Father what was on his heart. And that's why Jesus teaches us as his disciples to also pray to God as our Father. Now, there are going to be times when it's difficult to pray, when it's hard to share what's on your heart. But even in those situations, the Bible offers encouragement. I think of what we read in Romans 8, verse 26. It says there, "In the same way, the Spirit helps us in our weakness. We do not know what we ought to pray for, but the Spirit himself intercedes for us with wordless groans." And what you discover is that the more that you share your heart with God, the closer that your relationship is going to be. You see, one of the reasons why prayer can sometimes be difficult is because we look at it as something that we have to do rather than something that we get to do. Prayer is one of the greatest privileges in the Christian life. The fact that we, as human beings, get to enter into the presence of the Creator, the God who made everything, the God who upholds and sustains everything, who even right now is holding your life in your hands, and to think that he wants to hear from you. Now, I recognize that when it comes to sharing your heart, that's going to look different on different days. The same way that you don't come home and have the exact same conversation with your parents every day, but instead your conversation is it's gonna vary depending on the things that you experience on that day. Some days you're going to come home and you're going to be thankful for things. Some days you're going to come home and you're going to be frustrated about things. Some days you're going to come home and you're simply going to want to talk and ask for help with certain things. And that's also the case when it comes to prayer. In fact, Paul in Philippians 4, verse 6 and 7, he says this, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus." When you have something that's weighing on your heart, when you have like a burden, something that you're really struggling with, and it's weighing on you, there's something that's just awesome about going to someone that you know, someone that you trust, and sharing that burden. It's kind of like there's a an instant relief that comes over you. And I think that's the way that we ought to also think about prayer. It's that opportunity that we have to go to God and to share the things that we're thankful about, but also the things that are really weighing on us. And we want you to be young men and young women of prayer. And I think as you pursue that, you'll be amazed at the way in which the peace of God, which surpasses understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus.